Hi guys. We're going to continue our lessons where we would have if I were there. I'm going to be home today and tomorrow taking care of a baby who is sick with COVID, but I will be back in school on Wednesday. Those who were gone on Kairos, if you guys could get your quizzes done by Friday, that would be great. So I will remind you of that or try to remind you of that every day here until you get those in. Otherwise, you didn't really miss anything while you were gone on Kairos. We didn't do anything. So we are continuing today with section 3.5, sampling and surveys. We looked at different ways to get samples, and we determined that random sampling is the least biased method. Unfortunately, there are still potential sources of bias in our surveys, even when we select our samples at random. So one of the problems that we see occur is undercoverage. Undercoverage occurs when some members of the population are less likely to be chosen or cannot be chosen for the sample. Undercoverage leads to bias when the undercovered individuals differ from the population in ways that affect their responses. The list of individuals from which a sample will be drawn is called the sampling frame. If the sampling frame does not contain every member of the population, there's going to be undercoverage. So, as an example, the director of student life at a university wants to know what percent of students eat regularly on campus. To find out, the director selects a simple random sample of 300 students who live in the dorms. We want to describe how undercoverage might lead to bias in this study and explain the likely direction of the bias. Well, the director is selecting a simple random sample of 300 students who live in the dorms. Students who live in dorms probably have a meal plan in order to be able to eat on campus. That's a pretty normal thing. So students who do not live in the dorms would be undercovered here. He's not even talking to them. He's not asking them at all. Which means that the director's estimate of the percent of students who eat regularly on campus is probably going to be too large, because if you don't live in the dorms, you don't necessarily eat on campus. So that's an example of undercoverage. We also see non-response that happens. So non-response occurs when an individual chosen for the sample cannot be contacted or just refuses to participate in the survey. Non-response leads to bias when the individuals who cannot be contacted or refuse to participate would respond differently from those who do choose to participate. The best way to reduce the effect of non-response is to follow up with the people who do not respond the first time. You don't want to confuse voluntary response with non-response. So non-response can only occur after a sample has been selected. In voluntary response sample, every individual has opted to take part, so there's not going to be any non-response. So suppose we have an SAT preparation course that makes the following statement in their advertising brochure. They say, "We asked our graduates to report on their SAT scores before and after taking our course. The mean increase in SAT scores for the 500 graduates who responded was 210 points. Describe how non-response might lead to bias in the study, and we want to know, is the mean of 210 points likely greater than or less than the actual mean increase for all graduates in this course?"
To be quiet.
That's my 2-year-old Annabelle talking over me here. Sorry about that. So in this example, this SAT course, students who didn't score that well, whose scores didn't increase, might be embarrassed and choose not to respond to this survey.
sample.
So the estimate from the sample is likely greater than the actual mean increase for all graduates of the course, because those who didn't increase aren't gonna respond. So we have higher scores that we see for our increase than what the overall actually is. And then we also have other sources of bias. So response bias occurs when there's a consistent pattern of inaccurate responses to a survey question. Characteristics of the interviewer, the wording of the question, or respondents being untruthful, lack of anonymity, and lots of other factors can lead to response bias. So as an example, Marcos asked a random sample of 50 mall shoppers for their weight. 25 of the shoppers were asked directly, and the other 25 were asked anonymously by means of a secret ballot. The mean reported weight was 13 pounds heavier for the anonymous group. Why are the two means so different? Well, weight is a really touchy subject for a lot of people. So when you ask someone directly about their weight, they might lie about it because they're embarrassed for whatever the reason may be. When you ask people anonymously in a secret ballot, they're more likely to be honest about it. They may still lie, but they may be closer to the actual value than if you just ask them directly and expect them to answer you face to face. So those are ways that we can see that we still have bias that occurs even when we do random samples. So you are going to practice some problems like these. This will be due tomorrow on page 218, numbers 1 through 13 odds. Yes, I do expect this to be turned in tomorrow, even though I am not there. If you have questions, you can email me at any point in time, and I am here and I am available to answer your questions.